right, day 2 here at Apartmentalize 2022. The Apartment Academy is live once again, coming to you from the show, talking to some of the attendees here, hearing what they're here to uncover here at the show this year. And I have Hunter Crane with me from DTN Management. Hunter, welcome to the Apartment Academy.
Thanks for having me. I'm pumped.
So tell us a little bit quickly about DTN real quick.
Yeah, so we're based out of Lansing, Michigan, have about a 250 person headcount. Started out in third-party management about 50 years ago. They worked up slowly, and now as we're nearing towards the end of 2022, there's a big investor base they got under their belt, and a lot of capital that they've acquired. So we've started to get some new builds out in Traverse City, Bayview, Traverse City, and then in Livonia near Detroit at the Live Apartments.
And so how many total communities is under the portfolio right now?
Big number I had
Somewhere.
to review. Yeah, somewhere.
Plus or minus.
I would say near 100 to 150. Now we got about 10,000 residents. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
That I remember.
Yeah, so serious operator.
Not too bad.
Yeah, because, and I knew that in the first, before you even said the size of the company, I knew that because you have not one but two interior, or maybe more, internal marketing coordinators, which is a real luxury for this business, right?
Yeah, well, I'm just the only one. So when I came on,
you have a digital
marketing manager.
Yes,
yeah,
right.
Yeah, so working alongside her, and we even have a student marketing manager. Like what we were talking about, there are so many communities we have near Michigan State University within a dense zip code, and so having a student marketing manager to exclusively target that demographic has been super useful, and it's almost necessary just because of how much revenue comes from that.
Yeah, and of the portfolio, how much is student housing?
About 70%, about a 70-30 split.
Got it. So I'm going to talk more about that, but first of all, this is your first ever trip to Apartmentalize?
This is it, yeah, and San Diego. I never went out west before. I was always in the Midwest, Chicago, Florida, so it's cool coming out west and getting away from the humidity.
Yeah, okay, well, welcome. You're welcome.
I'm glad to be here.
It was funny, the day 1, it rained for about 30 seconds.
Really?
Yeah, and as I was walking by, somebody outside was cursing San Diego. Like, oh, what, we gave you 30 seconds of rain.
Right?
And
relax, man.
That's the expectations out here. So just impressions in the show so far. You got to the trade show floor.
Yeah, stepped onto the floor, got a sandwich, and was immediately overwhelmed. Had to step out, and then come find here, gather my bearings, then I'll go back out in a minute later.
Okay, we'll decompress here on the Apartment Academy, and then we'll send you.
Do some chair yoga.
Great idea. We'll take a quick pause. What I thought was interesting about your role there at DTN is your marketing focus is really more print.
Yeah.
Well, let's call it the analog side of marketing, which almost nobody ever really talks about anymore. There's so much focus on, can you make TikTok sell, lease apartment units, but there is still a big demand and a big marketing hole that can be filled with on the analog, on the print side. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of an unconventional mindset because when I was in high school and I had a marketing agency, that was something where digital was the main focus. As a 17-year-old, I don't care about print advertising. Facebook ads were the big new thing in 2017, 2018. And then hiring in at DTN, I realized that print still has a spot on the menu to drive some revenue. It's not just ads because, where we've gone now and everything is so saturated, everyone's doing TikTok ads, everyone's going to be on Facebook. You go out in Marketplace, there are just thousands of listings for units that are out there. But for some people, they may get too overwhelmed. They just say, screw it, I'm not going to pay attention to anything digital until I need to search it out. Or you take the unconventional route where people have kind of forgot about print and get something physical in their face. With the onset of COVID, it was a little bit tough because not everything was in person. But as we moved out of that and moved into something physical like this, people are starting to get more acquainted with the physical pieces, getting a physical brochure in their hand or getting an outreach flyer like what we do near MSU. And it's worked well so far.
Give us some examples. What's worked?
So the big thing that we like to focus on is utilizing outreach flyers with QR codes to allow retargeting. So a big thing that we like to have our teams do is being that we're in East Lansing in a dense community, it's easy to go out to the students just directly on the street. The culture out there is there's a big party scene, a lot of bars, college town obviously, so it's easier there. But a lot of traffic has actually been driven from these QR codes and these outreach flyers because it's something physical in these people's hands. You get to have a conversation piece. We like to pair along promo with handing this stuff out, so we're not just handing out paper. Here's this piece of paper that you probably don't care about. There's some promo that goes along with it, whether it be water bottles, maybe stress balls, something that they'll care about, not just like a pen or something. And it gets something physical in their hands and something to think about as they go to use it when they go back to class with a water bottle, or when they get stressed when finals come up with their stress balls.
So tell me what you expect so you're handing them a flyer with the QR code on it.
Right.
And then they take a picture of the QR code, they hit the link, and then what happens?
So then from there, that's when they're pulled into the digital side, and this is where the beauty of digital, it still has its place. I kind of crashed on it early on.
It still has its place.
Everyone
there
knows.
is a room for
Yeah.
digital marketing.
Let me say it before I get the pitchforks on me. So then that's where digital comes in. The cookies get thrown in, the retargeting. But to get that initial touch point is where the beauty of print is, and to have that physical touch piece. And I think it's key to have a conversation when these things happen, because unless that's happening, and that just falls in with a leasing conversation if someone is already in touring, it's important to have a one-on-one and maybe a personal connection that they can make, just so they feel they have a reason to check it out, rather than a transactional surface level piece of paper that they just got and don't care about.
I don't know if you've thought this. I'm sure you've thought this through. Does the form factor matter here? Is an 8.5 by 11 with a QR code work better than handing out a business card with the QR code? Is there any reason one works better than the other?
So when I first hired in, we had done a thing where we would do what's called a two-up, and so it would just be a half sheet of paper, and it would just be on think of a regular loose leaf, just a little bit higher end, little nicer feel. But what I found and what I thought about as I was designing and printing these flyers is most everyone is printing on these half sheets, and I wasn't a big fan of how it felt, how loose it was. And so we've since transitioned into moving to cardstock and 4-ups, so more like a traditional postcard size. And it's proven to be a better form factor for condensing the information and just getting the key touch points in there. Some pictures of the property, some lifestyle photos, with some key USPs in there with the call to action and a QR code at the bottom. It's also pretty easy to pair with whatever items you may have. Because with a stress ball, it could be tough to throw in this big old half sheet rather than a little postcard.
You mean you're handing them the stress ball along with the 4-up sized?
Right.
Yeah,
Correct.
That's more
Yeah.
manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and is this strategy, I don't know, uniquely suited to dense areas like Lansing, or do you think the strategy would work, or have you used it in other areas?
So I think obviously there's going to be ways where it's more efficient, just because in East Lansing there's so many properties they've got within a single zip code. But it's not something to be discounted for, say, if you've got a luxury conventional property in a rural area. You still got customers that are out there, say in community centers or walking on the streets downtown. So even at some of the luxury properties we have, like there's one, Aspen Lakes and Holt, that's one of our larger communities and one they've had for a while. We have them do outreach too. So I'll design that same form factor with the higher end cardstock. Obviously different demographics, so we try to do a nicer feel cardstock with a more luxury design rather than a typical student one, and have them go out to where people are going to be at, whether it's a local event. There was a DeWitt community showcase, like a community convention like this, for the Corey Apartments in DeWitt in Michigan, and they went out there, they set up a booth like this, had a banner, and it was just a way to get in front of these people's faces. A strategy like that requires some unconventional thinking, because you got to kind of have some empathy in the way you're approaching it, just like we were talking about in the general session that we heard, I think with Magic Johnson yesterday. It's important to step into the customer's shoes and figure out where they would be at. Where would your ideal customer be spending their time if they weren't going to be staying at home wherever they were and happen to be looking for housing at the same time?
Yeah, right. You've solved that. You've solved half your problem with marketing, right? Figure that out. All right, great suggestion. Is there anything else in your bag of tricks that you've used that's successful?
I would say that I would just harp on the QR codes again. There was we had to bounce around some services, but once we found one that allowed tracking, it's been really interesting to see where certain campaigns lead. Like, for example, there was a advertisement that we placed on a cattle bus that would drive through MSU's campus for, I think it was a 2-week period. And it was really interesting to see who would be scanning this huge QR code on the back of this bus. Because
Yeah.
honestly, I wouldn't think that I would ever scan a QR code on a bus, but if you're in these dense streets in East Lansing, or even if you tried this somewhere else, someone somewhere is going to be driving a car or walking by and see apartments near East Lansing, DTN management, and then see whatever the USPs may be. I'm looking for housing. I haven't really seen much online, or I've seen too much. I don't really care to see what they are because I have a physical touch piece right in front of me. I'll scan it and see what they have to say. And so then we could drill down by device type, scan time. It's really interesting to just dig into those analytics and figure out where the people are that really care about what you're putting out there.
Right. Yeah. I wonder if are there other aspects of marketing that, again, I'll just define them as more analog, like banners or things that draw the eye to a leasing office that's under your purview?
Yeah. So this is something that is kind of exclusive to densely populated communities, but it could still work for sparse areas. So we do a thing every year called the Student Guide, and it was a white paper that the owner developed years ago. I believe they started it maybe back even before 2000. And it's basically just a catalog they put together of all the properties they have within East Lansing, because there's such a solid demographic, and it's very easy for them to care about it because all these properties are within walking distance of the campus. But at the same time, even if you have properties that may be a couple cities, or I don't want to say a couple cities over, but near each other, maybe a few streets away, that could be centralized into a single touch point like that community showcase, it would still be useful to have a white paper or a brochure maybe if there's less to pack into it. Obviously with DTN there's so much within the East Lansing market, it's easy to get into a booklet. But a booklet with maybe 1 or 2 pages, because there's not such a dense population of communities, maybe harder to fit it into a booklet. So I still think it's useful. And then pair that with the QR codes just to have something physical in their face.
Yeah. We just have a minute left. We want to let you get back to the show. I think it would be interesting, since you're you're new to the industry, you're a young person, just graduated recently from college. What excites you about multifamily, the intersection between multifamily and marketing? Why have you chosen this as to start your career in marketing?
I think I try to think about forward. I try to forward think and figure out where things are going to go in the future. It's such a recession-proof industry. But the beautiful thing is it's never going to stop innovating, because we've got all these companies here that are not going to stop trying to figure out where the next TikTok is, or following Gary Vee to see what the next thing is. So I think it's interesting to pay attention to what the new trends are, but also pay attention to where things are lacking. And I think right now, with people so heavy set on digital and where they can take their money, that there's still a place for physical, in-person marketing touch pieces.
Right. Well said. All right. Are we recentered and we're ready to head to the trade show floor?
I hope. Maybe you got to get another coffee, get wired a little bit. Maybe that's what I need, or a water.
No, maybe the coffee's probably the bad idea. Water, go with the water.
Right, I need the depressant here.
Great. Well, thanks for taking the time to come on the show and talk with us about your unique perspective on marketing. I appreciate it.
This was a ton of fun.
Right on. Thanks, Hunter. All right. Well, back to you. We'll be back again in a little bit with another interview here from Apartmentalize 2022. Welcome back to Apartmentalize 2022, live here at the Apartment Academy. We are with Tony Blake, founder and CEO of Tony Tony, industry influencer, social media magnate, all things Apartmentalize and the apartment industry. Thanks for joining us.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited to be here. Love to lend my voice to this amazing conference. For those of you who are here, hey. For those of you who are not, hello.
Yeah, what are you actually doing right now if you're not here?
And thanks for joining us live right now so that you can get a little bit of a feel of this incredible event. I heard there's like 11,000 people here.
It could be a record year.
It could be.
We're back. We're back. The industry's back.
Yeah, and faces. All kinds of faces, no masks. It's been really, really awesome.
Now, Tony, a lot of people know you, period, full stop, but a lot of people know you for as a speaker. You have a lot of great things to say about leasing and marketing. You're associated with Apartment All-Stars, all of that. But you have for the first time this year, you released a newsletter that was more sort of, let's call it strategic, or that was a little different take on what people are used to hearing from you. And I want to talk about some of that.
Yeah, that's my trend report. So I actually recorded my trend report this year. I normally make it available to my clients, and at the executive level, I consult with them because we always talk about what are your executive goals to teach the front line? What are we looking to move? What KPIs? What part of their performance are we looking to move? So I'm always talking with the national teams and the executives, but my audience, my tribe, is definitely the leasing and the site teams and the managers and maintenance. I mean, those are my people. That's who I'm speaking to. But this year was such a big year. So I follow trendwatching.com, one of the biggest global trend watchers. I follow the Edelman Trust Barometer, which I've been following for about 9 years. It's phenomenal. In fact, I would tell you to go back to about 4 years and then move forward on what's happened with trust in America. Yeah. Because in 2018, we were the biggest global losers of trust, the USA, and it was industry. Huge loss of trust in industry. And then last year and this year, the United States of America, the most trusted was industry. So there's been this huge shift where people are looking at companies. And then when you look at the trends on GWI, follow Connect the Dots, and some of the other resources, which we'll share,
we'll put those in the links.
How we're literally flipping our brands inside out, where they were looking last year to the companies, the executives, to make the right choices, to demonstrate character, to be socially conscientious of what's going on in our world. And then this year they're looking at our people. The brands are flipped inside out, and how our people perform at customer service and in these stressful moments with this inflation rising and everything going on, how they address it is the top of the mind of the consumer today. So in January, when I saw all this, I started ringing the bell. I'm like, people, you're making a decision about rent that you have to live with for a year, and the Russians are in Ukraine. Like, what the hell? I mean, we've got all of that. We're coming out of this global pandemic, and now we've got inflation. So the site teams have not had a break. And the stress they're under is incredible. And the residents are coming to them saying, what is going on with this rent increase?
Because what are rents rising?
Okay,
what did you
so nationally, I would say that 18 is probably the number I most saw in the trend reports reported in January. And there's a ton of resources I can provide for you where those are being created. But here's the thing, it's that I've got clients that are doing 40% rent growth. We've got markets that are at 25%, and people don't understand it. Is
40%?
40% revenue growth. But here's the thing I want you to get, okay? This could be our last up year. I think inflation is going to actually trigger the next recession. I don't think hypersupply, it'll be the first time in my life, 40 years, watching multifamily, that hypersupply is not going to trigger the recession, which it almost always does. We're supposed to reach saturation in 2015, and yet here we are in 2022 building successful lease-ups with these elevated rents. And the other thing is that I had one developer tell me they had a project that didn't get sticks in the ground, so they had to redo the bids. It went up 37% cost.
Yeah.
So if there's a little bit of a tick down in development, and I think that some developers going, I'm not building at the top of the market, I'm going to wait a while. But some builders are taking on that cost and passing it on. And if you have a 37% increase in cost in your development, you got to pass it on to the customer. So 40% is not uncommon in the rent increases that are going on right now. But most importantly, with this trend of the flipping the brand inside out, where our site teams are the ones confronted, your site teams don't understand some of these operational things that are going on. And so all year long, I've been working really hard to make sure the site teams don't see it as like a golden parachute that you've got
For the owners.
for the owners.
Yeah.
Like that you've got. I had one property tell me that the cost of their insurance, one line item, was up $40,000. So executives see this. The site teams don't know it. They have consumer thinking, and good Lord, there's bias against us with the rent moratorium and what the
Yeah.
hell, going on. And so all of a sudden, like, there's this bad landlord, you made me pay rent during COVID, and it's unacceptable. And so on the tail of that, now we're faced with this inflation, 5.9 according to the Social Security Administration currently, but we're going into about an 8.9. So you're making a decision about your rent for a year into the future.
Yes.
Freon is up 300%. Finding an appliance is a scavenger hunt. And we've got costs that we have to cover in the decisions we're making right now
Yes.
moving in. So I literally have clients where we're doing like the COLA, the cost of living adjustment through the Social Security Administration. We're following that math and calling it a COBA, which I made up. It's not an official term, but it should be a cost of business adjustment. It makes sense, doesn't it? Come on now, who's with me? All right, give me something in the chat. But the COBA, it just sounds good, doesn't it? Cost of business adjustment.
It's going to catch on.
It's with the Southern accent. But the cost of business adjustment, and we're literally showing them, we're going to do 5.9 growth in your rent here through the end of the year. Then we're doing 8.9. And I had a client that was doing a 2% across the board rent increase. And I was like, dude, you're not going to pay your bills next year.
Next year.
So I helped them and their managers understand it and completely convert. So yes, I normally have a message for the site teams, like let's be joyful and be fun, and here's the marketing trends. But I am dedicated to multifamily housing, and this is a really crazy time. And so I wanted to use my voice to speak to the executives this year.
And you haven't mentioned labor, cost of labor,
No.
right? Which is a significant component, obviously.
Right, and also retention. If your employees don't understand, I asked the executives to pull like 2 line items. And I know NAA did a whole thing with using a $1 bill on the make sense of the cost of renting, but I want big numbers. I want the resident to hear that we just paid $575,000 property taxes on your home, that if you owned a home, you would pay property taxes.
Right.
If you owned a home, you'd pay this. If you owned it, but we paid it. And to take off this idea that we're just trying to overcharge them does not truly, it's not really the truth. And if our teams in the field understood it better and had a better operational vision of it, I believe that they could justify it with the residents and work on the resident relations that they need to have.
Yeah, then I think that's really the point, Tony. I think that listeners, viewers should take away from this if they're on the executive side is, as operating executives, COOs and directors of operations, they understand these things. They see.
You see it all the time.
That's right. But if they don't communicate the things you're talking about to the folks in the field who are on the front lines of presenting that rent increase to the
Right.
residents, who then they take the slings and arrows of how dare you raise your rent on me, and et
Right.
cetera, then they're not armed to explain in a meaningful way why this isn't just about lining the landlord's pockets. It's about being able to provide affordable housing without losing money in an inflationary cycle.
And
it's important.
I think it could be hurtful to your online reputation as well. I think if your site teams don't manage this correctly with the right, justifiable financial information for the resident that they are made aware of and have deep clarity about. I created a card game that has 2 decks of cards. One deck of cards has actual resident objections, like what residents are saying when they come in the office. And the other stack has points of consideration, things the residents should consider. And they shuffle the cards, and every time they turn over 2 cards, it creates a practice conversation. So the card game gives the site teams an opportunity to practice, because you don't buy a violin and schedule a concert. The whole reason we practice is because we build confidence. They need to develop confidence in that language. So my clients are really digging. Shout out to Jamin Harkin in Atlanta, because he's the one who really put me on this track and helped me to design my up series. Like, let's get our teams up motivated, let's get the rent up. And again, this could be our last up year, so wherever you're at, that's where you're going to fall from. So I completely agree with the rent growth, and I think it's important. I just want the site teams to be operationally aware of where that money's going and that we need it, that it's not some just market rate adjustment, that this is a strange time and we need to be growing our revenue.
That's a good message to give to folks with the proper context.
Right.
At a time like this, so that in a year they're not in trouble. Tony, thank you for so much for coming on the Apartment Academy today. We're going to let you get back to the trade show floor. We're going to put some of the resources that you mentioned. We'll put that in when we post this for folks to watch at a later time. So thank you for that as well.
You're welcome.
It was great to see you.
Oh, so great to see you. Thank you for making this happen and giving us an opportunity to share live from NAA.
Back to you all, and we'll be up in about another half hour with another scintillating interview here at the Apartment Academy.
Woo!
Bye-bye.
you.